tell me about yourself. Tell me about your time as an athlete, real briefly, like who you are, what you've been doing, how we came to work together, basically.
So I'm Andy White. I've had the pleasure of knowing Liz since I began track and field at UBC in 2009, and I've been a javelin thrower ever since. I had a brief stint doing skeleton racing, a winter sport, for about 2.5, 3 years. But I've been a javelin thrower ever since. Proud UBC Thunderbirds alumni, and yeah, recently also proud national champion 2023, 2024. That's a little bit about me.
Sweet. And a little background for people. So Andy and I trained together for the last year and a bit, and we got pretty deep in the weeds. And Andy was the first person who I basically took my method and I said, all right, I'm going to tell you everything I know so that we can train together and so that we can enhance each other. And Andy's, one of the most athletic people I've ever met. And I say that having been to 3 Olympics and seeing people do some freaky stuff. Like, Andy can do some really cool stuff. But I was like, why hasn't Andy thrown further? How do we get Andy to the next level? So when I sat you down at dinner and I said, do you want to make the Olympics, basically? And like, if you're going to do this, it's now or never. You got kind of one more left in you for like time, maybe 2, but realistically, like, this is it. Let's try and make it. And
you said, are you coming with me or are you not? And
you're not.
I always look back to that moment and I say, when a 3-time Olympian asks if you're coming, you say I'm coming. So
Yeah. I was like, looking back on it now, what do you think was like the biggest, the block you felt like you were facing at that time?
I've always felt like this has been possible for me, that big throws are possible. And at the same time, I had a belief in myself that it was possible for me to do it. So I think the biggest block I viewed was it's my technique. I got to spend all my time on technique. And I think that was kind of the big thing. And I think when I started working with you, you were able to give me a little bit of perspective and shine some light on what is actually missing or what could I get access to. So when you came to me and said, do you want to work together? I just saw this as like, this is entering my life at a very critical time, and let's go see what we can get up to. So I've always been a very curious person. I'm always open to ideas, and if someone has something to offer me, I'm all ears. My biggest roadblock, I think, was belief in myself. And yeah, and I think it's something technical to do with my sport, because I'm pretty fit, I'm a pretty athletic guy. I think my levels are well up there, but what is that missing link? So I've been searching.
That belief in yourself is hard to come by sometimes, and to just like charge into it. And it stops us from doing certain things because we don't think it's accomplishable in a certain period of time, or so we don't start, or we don't commit wholly. And so what was something that during our time together, we spent a lot of time working on your belief system, because that's a part of mental training and emotional training, because beliefs aren't just mental. Like, you have to go to the heart of something. You have to understand someone's story, you have to understand where they're coming from, and you have to find a path forward for them. What was one thing that you felt like we were able to work through? What was a technique that we used that helped you develop that belief in yourself, realizing that belief in yourself was a skill, that confidence was a skill?
For sure, it hit me when I was training with you, and you showed me your calendar, and you basically had a track record of everything that you have been doing and everything that you'd noticed and taken stock of in your journey. So when you shared with me your system for basically, I don't know how I could explain it other than tracking the work that you've been putting in, your daily steps that you've been putting in. I saw that as immediate access to really being able to look back and see, look at everything I've done. Because as athletes, we always feel like, me personally, I always feel like there's something more I could be doing. And you train all day, you do all the little things, you eat right, you take care of yourself, with physio and massage, everything. But you always think, there's something more I can be doing. But I think with you, I realized that it's all right there. You just have to look back at all the steps that you've done along the way. And it's like, when you look back and see, actually, I am doing all the things that I said I was going to do and that I plan to do. Well, that just instills a really strong belief in yourself. So that was one tool I think that you have that I really connected with.
Nice. Yeah, the daily wins calendar is,
Mm.
it's like, it's
It goes,
interesting. The more you do it, the more you're like, oh wow, okay, I'm really moving in this direction. Like look at the progress. It's incredible.
yes, yeah, because we're going this way, right? So um, you're just taking stock of all the things that are pushing you forward in this direction. Or maybe you can look back and see, oh yeah, that's how it was actually funneling me towards this pathway where I needed to go. Or, I met this person and they had taught me about this one thing. And if I hadn't learned that along the way, I never would have found myself where I'm at. So it's a really interesting way to look back as well, and just to know that you're going through the steps.
I think for us, it was like, even I noticed when we were both doing it
Mhm.
simultaneously when we were together, we were playing a synchronicities game. And man, it felt like an adventure. It felt
Yeah,
surreal.
100%. And the funny thing is, it seems kind of like it could seem to anyone as like that's kind of silly, but things would happen that were just too coincidental to be a coincidence. This kind of leads me into the next thing that I really got from you, which I think I really want to highlight is, you and I are both
Yeah.
people who are heading in a certain direction, and we have a goal and we have an intention of a certain outcome, right? And it was, let's get to the Olympics. Or can we get to the Olympics, but doing it this way? And specifically, it
This
was
way.
a different way, not particularly all planned out ahead of time, still structured, but not all planned out ahead of time. And what we were looking for is, if you take the viewpoint that the universe is trying to help you and push you towards your goal, then everything that happens in your life, both seemingly good or bad or indifferent, it's all pushing you towards that direction. So, are you paying attention to those things that are happening in your day to day? And this ties into, what you have taught me about gratitude. And so if you believe in that everything's pushing you towards your goal, then you can be grateful for everything that's happening in your life. And that tips the scales to you being in a positive state, positive emotional state. And it's kind of the base framework that I see now to help build everything off of. It just gave me a whole different framework of seeing the world. Like everything that's happening in my life, I can be grateful for because I know that it's putting me or pushing me in the direction that I want to go. And it may not be something I want, it may not be a pleasurable thing, but it is the thing that is directing me. Um, it's giving me the answer. I just have to be looking out for what is the answer that it is giving me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the lesson?
What's the lesson here?
Yeah. And I
Totally.
think like even with both of us, it's like neither of us made the Olympics,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But at the same time, the goal was to make the Olympics. I wanted to throw a world record. My groin went. But at the same time, when I really think about it, my real deep vision was to
Mhm.
learn something to be able to change the way we train athletes. And I felt like I needed to prove it. And what I realized was that by doing a year and a half of training and sharing what I was doing with people, I was proving it. I learned so many things in a year and a half at such an accelerated speed that
Mhm.
it was obviously working. And
Yeah.
sometimes the proof is in the doing, not in the small little achievement that you thought was going to prove it.
Mhm.
Even with you, like you showed up at nationals and like it was so exciting to watch you. You had so many great throws and like you learned how to do a backflip this year. Like the amount of things that you learned to do in the amount of time we worked together was like, I think what you wanted was to feel like good about yourself about like a certain thing, about like feeling like you'd given everything towards something and feeling good about coming full circle in a journey. And like
Yeah.
realistically, that was your vision. It's like it's kind of funny. It's like sometimes we think this is exactly what we want, but we really want is like something very close to it. But you have to go in the direction of the thing that you see the most clearly.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And like this year was one of the most special years I had in my sport because we decided to go back to Australia and New Zealand to train, which is
Yeah.
really where my entire track and field journey began. Because when I was 10 years old, my parents took me to watch the Olympics in Sydney. And that's where I first ever saw javelin. And I was hooked as a 10-year-old. I always thought this is the coolest sport. fast forward a few years later when I'm getting into high school, and I got to try it, and then I knew right away this is the coolest sport, and it's going to be my sport one day. So for us to come back and to see where this journey all began, incredibly special, and incredibly more special because in that time, both my parents had passed, right? And this is where my parents brought me on my first big trip. So I have so many amazing memories of traveling with my parents as a family. Their life lesson to me was, while we have our health, while we have the time, we're going to do this together as a family. And that is a life lesson outside of sport I will always remember. It's while we can, while we're together, we're going to do this thing and we're going to have an amazing time. And it's, yeah, I've got goosebumps just
Me
talking.
too.
It's something so special. And to come back to where it all began really tied this all together. And that you made me realize another thing about myself, in that, we're not just up to this to throw a pointy stick.
No.
It's it. I would say a lot of athletes have different perspectives, or similar perspectives. In that, one is, they want to see what they can get up to. Like, what can I do in this time? And it's exciting. It's fun. It's like, what's possible for me? It's also something larger than we know ourselves to be. So it really causes us to extend beyond ourselves. We have to leave our old selves behind to step into this new world, right? So for me to join forces with you, that was also letting go of some familiar ways that I've had over the past few years. And it's like, okay, now I'm actually going to meet other throwers who are at that level. I'm going to get to see what it's like. I'm going to step into higher competition. I'm going to get to train with a 3-time Olympian. So it's just it really pulled me forward. And so many things about our trip, just incredibly special this year. And I think for me, I had the intention of competing at the highest level. Did I get there? No, I didn't. But I went about this year in a completely different way, and I'm still able to maintain that high level of performance. And I had the most fun doing it, which leads me to another thing we learned. You learn how much faster in perceived or just in play versus
20 to 40 times faster in play than in work. So we're like, we always have to have fun. And our
yeah,
theme for the trip is we're never in a rush.
yeah. And we learn fast, like you mentioned earlier. I learned how to do a backflip, and it was something I wanted to do by the end of the trip. And I think it was like a few days in.
I was like, that was fast.
Yeah, it's really neat. We both had a very different year training, and we still were able to perform at some of our highest performances. So,
Yeah,
mm,
sweet. All right. I got one more for you. I'm gearing my course mainly towards athletes, high school athletes, university athletes, and then also people who are just in high performance. So it's
mm,
all high performance. It just depends on what field you're in. And it just depends on whether you're focusing on more mental or physical or emotional or social. And, sometimes obviously if you're an athlete, you need to really understand the physical aspects and blend in all these others. And if you're in business, you understand the mental and emotional, and you need to blend in some physicality because they really enhance and amplify each other. If you were thinking about talking to anybody, to an athlete or to just a regular person or anyone, and they were considering joining my program or working with me, what would you say to them?
I would say Liz is a mastermind at connecting the dots. So you can take concepts that to others might not appear necessarily related, and you can string them together. You have this incredible ability to see the whole picture. So when I started training with you, I learned just so much about myself that I didn't know. And why that made such a difference for me is because that's exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for that which I couldn't see for myself. And you were able to bring that out. You taught me why my story mattered. And my story mattered because it's what I'm up to and it's how the people in my life relate to me. I've heard from a couple of friends of mine that they just thought I was doing track and field because I really liked it and I was really passionate about it. But it's so much more than that. I have such a deep connection to the sport, and it really it just matters to me on a very very deep and personal level. It's just part of who I am as well. And to be able to share more about myself and what I'm doing, yeah, it had people relate to me in a whole new way. And that just fueled forward my journey and what I was looking for. And, this mission that we're on, just to see how far can we take this thing. So I think for, a lot of athletes and even just business professionals out there, people are seeking out this new level. They're looking for what's missing. And you have the ability to see that and pull that out for them and hold up that mirror for them. So I think that's an incredibly special thing about working with you.
Thanks. I don't think anybody could have said it better. I appreciate
Oh,
it. Yeah, I told someone, I've been telling people, I'm basically a high performance encyclopedia.
yeah.
It's like, tell me
Trademark.
your problem, and I'll be like, all right, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Like this. Here you go.
Yeah. That's great. Liz Galito, the human encyclopedia, the human high
Human high
performance.
performance.
That's great.
Love it. Sweet. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording this call, but I
Okay.
really appreciate your testimony and your time and energy.
Oh, of course. I hope it's useful.
I know. No, it's definitely useful.